Hello there, welcome back. Today I'm going to talk about two films from AIP from the early 70s that were both set in Depression era, which were Dillinger and Hard Times. Now, these are both directorial debuts for John Milius and Walter Hill. One of them, the Milius one, led to a really interesting directorial career. The other one that flamed out pretty quick. Another one, Walter Hill, led to a much longer career that wasn't as strong as the Milius films, but it was a respectable, solid career. So it was two different directors with two different paths. They both made action movies. They both had a sense of adventure, really, for the action movie and the what you could do with it. But Milius was a much more interesting, questioning person, and Hotel just liked the genre. Is the best way to put it. So it's two different approaches. Now, they're both made by AIP, and Lawrence Gordon was the producer at AIP, and he was looking for directors who he could bring in, or people who he could bring in to actually make sort of low budget films that would be good. So he brought in John Milius, who's already a big writer in Hollywood. He'd already written Apocalypse Now, even though it had been made. He'd rewritten Dirty Harry. He'd written some scripts that were getting filmed, like Jeremiah Johnson and Judge Roy Bean. So he was a well-known figure who people wanted to write their films. But he wanted to direct because he already had the experience of people making films from his script and not liking the results. So he's looking to direct. So Gordon more or less said to him, look, if you lower your price and write this thing, you won't get paid much, but you'll get a chance to direct if you go for a certain budget. And he gave him three genres that they had interest in, one of which was the 1930s gangster era, and Cause of Bonnie and Clyde had just come out, and a couple of people who had not had films made about them yet, or at least at that time. One of which was Dillinger. There'd been an old film in the 40s made with Dillinger, but nothing that people remembered very well. So Milius chose Dillinger. And the success of this film actually led to Hard Times, because after the success of that one, Gordon thought, I'll do it again. I'll get another young writer who wants to direct, which is Walter Hill, and they did the same thing. And then I think I was only did it twice, really. I think people move on from their job spot, but so essentially it was the same idea. It was like, these films are popular, do it with a certain limited budget, and we'll finance it. So it worked out well for two films, and both these films are still well thought of and still getting re-released. So it was a good investment. Now, I think Dillinger's the stronger of the films, but Hard Times is still a very good film. It's still one of the strongest Walter Hill films. It suffers a lot, but in the second half, for the one character beat that doesn't work because the way it's been cast and the way they did not work out that casting to the writing. So there was a flaw, but I'll get to that. Dillinger is the gem of the two, though. Dillinger is genuinely excellent. I mean, it's been released in Arrow recently, where you get interviews and commentaries and things. I'd seen this years ago, and I kept on seeing it, but this is the first time I saw it on a bigger screen from a projector, which you can see behind me. And it is a revelation, a bigger screen, because it was meant for a screen rather than a TV. That's the thing. A bit older directors, they did not grow up with television, or they grew up with television as a background with very bland shows, so they didn't want to eat that. They wanted to eat what's on the cinema. So when they come out into the cinema, they understood how to shoot stuff for mood and for excitement and keep things interesting. So they were not shooting scenes just to do coverage, or shooting scenes to create emotion when the scenes, so that the scenes have an impact. And Milius has the thing of, it's his first film, and he's very much enjoying it, and he's discovered the possibilities of what he can do with the camera and what he can do with the facility, even though he doesn't have that much money, and he's pretty much having to improvise a lot and very basic setups. But even then, he's basically got lighting and lenses, and he's got a set and actors, so he's got a lot he can work with. So he keeps on making his film and trying to be as inventive as possible. And the film is just wonderful because it embraces the whole thing of Dillinger. His big ambition in life is to become a great bank robber, and he does it. By the start of the film, he's already a great bank robber. It's all about his downfall, but the film doesn't stick to that in the sense of eventually they get there, but it's showing you the seeds of his downfall and the people involved in his downfall. But he's not going to recognize his downfall until it happens. He's not going to be introspective in any way. He does not see the need to change. It's very different from Johnny Depp's performance in Public Enemies, which it's a film I enjoy, but it's a bit too long. And they don't get Dillinger as well as they do in this film. This film, Dillinger pretty much enjoys himself, gets on with most folk, but he's not going to be moved away from what his idea of what his life should be, which is to be a bank robber. So he's played by Warren Oates, and one of his best performances. Oates is having a great time because he's dominating the screen. He has the most charismatic part. He has the best dialogue, and you can just tell he's enjoying himself immensely in this part. There's also Melvin Purvis' character, which is the guy who's hunting him down, played by Ben Johnson. He's also enjoying himself because he gets the voiceover. He gets to be the old guy of wisdom who's actually got a much more amused view in the matter. He's going to catch Dillinger and all the outlaws he runs with, but he's going to take his time. He's not going to get too worried about it. He's actually he's going to be tactical and wait for Dillinger to make a mistake. And of course, Dillinger will make mistakes. Dillinger's an impulsive guy, and his gang's impulsive, and they can't stay out of trouble because they have to rob banks. That's their job. And eventually things are going to go wrong. People are going to die. And start off, Purvis is waiting for him to cross the state line so it becomes a federal case. And once that happens, he can up his game. Until then, he's watching Dillinger and hunting down other criminals. Now, in this film, they give him motivation, which is one of his people get killed by a bunch of outlaws, including Babyface Nelson, Pretty Boy Floyd, Dillinger. All these big gangsters are apparently involved in killing this guy. I think it's made up for the film. It's a film conceit, but this is a film about the myth of Dillinger and living the myth. So it doesn't really matter. It works well as a thematic idea. There's just a sense of a grand narrative and from this criminal. Basically, he's larger than life. Everyone knows who John Dillinger is, and he even during the bank robberies, he's making speeches to them, like, "Make this be this is one of the greatest times of your life. This will give you stories to tell your children, your grandchildren." There's a sense of Milius enjoying the absurdity of it all and enjoying the myth making, and actually letting Dillinger in the joke, because the joke's finally going to be him because he's going to die, but he really enjoys being a bank robber. And Milius enjoys watching him be a bank robber. Now, you've Harry Dean Stanton and Jeffrey Lewis as two of his henchmen who are also get some really nice beats. Like, Lewis is with the guy who's married, he's got a wife, and he's probably the more conservative of the bunch, but he still needs the wildness of robbing banks. And Harry Dean Stanton plays a guy who's basically much more of a playboy, and he's enjoying the money and he's enjoying the celebrity of it all. Frank McRae turns up as well as one of the gang members halfway through, because Dylan just brings him from jail and Dylan just brings himself from jail, and they end up becomes part of the crew. There's other people come involved. Babyface Nelson, which is played by Richard Dreyfuss, who's a total psycho. Your Pretty Boy Floyd, played by Steve Canale, who's one of the most sympathetic criminals in the sense that he can be polite, he can understand other people, he can be decent to other people when he's not in the job, really. So it's like, it's a job with him. But people like him. So he becomes one of the first figures that when he finally dies, you kind of feel bad for him, because even though he shouldn't because he's a bank robber, it's still like, kind of like that guy. So there's lots of interesting characters, lots of interesting situations that constantly go through the film. The film is just having a great time, just embracing the myth of Dillinger, embracing the absurdity, embracing the craziness of Dillinger and what he's about, and the craziness of the time. And he just carries you through. Like, the film does not focus on, oh no, he's going to die. Basically, set up to him dying comes like 10 minutes before the end. It's almost like, oh yeah, we have to have to deal with this now. It's like it's the after effects of all the different escapades he gets into, and eventually one thing goes wrong. You have a great shootout, and then pretty much shall lead to the end of Dillinger. But the film does not stop to bemoan that. It's almost like a celebration of the craziness of the whole thing and the excitement of the problems of the day, showing the problems of why were some of these people like bank robbers, and some of them were just bank robbers because like down to they wanted to be, but also there was the depression and people getting robbed at their homes and all these things are going on. And the film's in love with the craziness of the whole thing. People are just getting on with it because they don't have anything, so they have a sense of humor and sense of absurdity of the whole situation. It's like they're not really on the side of the guys try to catch Dillinger, because these guys are working with rich guys who are messing them about. Still love Dillinger and all the bank robbers, because it's like, well, they're the ones who are sticking it back to the people in charge. And then there's other ones who are paid by the people in charge, who are a lot more brutal about Dillinger and what they would do to people like Dillinger. So whenever you get towards anyone near a lawman, that's when it gets dangerous. And the film does show how dangerous it can be to be an outlaw. It also doesn't pull back from Dillinger could be brutal with women, with his love character in the film. Doesn't shy from that either. So the film is just wonderful. It's got this great sense of enjoyment, but also does show the darker side of the characters. It doesn't like wallow in the darker side of the characters, but it does show it. Hard Times is more of a normal film in a sense. It's a genre film, but it's basically a boxing film where you go from fight to fight. I mean, Charles Bronson plays a street fighter, or a guy who's forced by a street fighter due to the times because he can fight, and that's the work available during Depression. He hooks up with James Coburn, who plays a kind of betting man who fronts him to the fighters to other fights to actually make money off the betting. But Coburn's basically he's a gambling addict, and even when he gets ahead, he'll still destroy himself because he's this gambling addiction. So it's Bronson's having to deal with him while dealing with just saving up money, and also just dealing with the idea that he's trying to make bonds with people, but due to the time, these bonds aren't going to last. He has to remain true to his own code, even if others don't. So Jill Ireland, who's Bronson's wife, plays a character who he falls in love with, and she likes him, but she ends up going with someone else because it's a bit more safe, really. And Bronson's not really safe because he's a fighter, and he has to deal with Coburn and Coburn's medic guy, who both have problems. I mean, the medic guy is like a junkie. Coburn's a gambling addict. Now, the problem with the film is Coburn's character starts off being very slick, and then at a certain point he realizes he's a gambling addict. But there's not a switch there's not a comfortable switch in narrative terms to make you understand how A and B link up. It seems like there's like two performances by Coburn. It's like he's a slick guy to everything under control, and he's a gambling addict. And it goes from one to the other. And it's like it needed a rewrite because they wrote a character, then they cast Coburn, and I don't think they kind of worked out that it was too much of a jump. Or I don't know, maybe they expected him to do something different, but you don't get a hint of the problems of the guy. You get a suggestion that he's in trouble sometimes, but you don't get a hint of he's a full-on gambling addict until too late in the film. He should have, but you don't. And that's to do with the casting and the directing. But apparently Hill and Coburn didn't go on that well. But there is a kind of gap in the early section where Coburn's been too charming and you're not actually getting the sense of this guy's really damaged. So, which I think is a subtext, but it doesn't really come across in performance. Bronson's a lot better. Bronson actually understands his character really well. He's a guy who, as a fighter, he's doing it for the money. And at a certain point, he'll stop fighting because at that point, he'll earn enough money and he can move on because that's the way he can make money during this depression. That's all he's in it for. But he's got all these codes, moral codes he's got. And he's watching him try to navigate his moral codes. Like, he can't walk away from Coburn when Coburn's in dire straits towards the end, even though he knows he should. So it's always a test of his character or what he does, like how he gets hooked with Coburn, how he gets to deal with Coburn, how he has to separate from Coburn, how he has to save him. So it becomes a moral character sense of this guy who doesn't say much, but you sense who he is from his physical performance. And that's what Bronson did best, really, when he was younger, was this idea that it's the look in the eyes, it's the way he interacts with people rather than what he says that actually means a lot. Like, he could be a lot more expressive than Eastwood in the 70s if he was given the right script. But Eastwood actually chose his projects a lot better than Bronson did. Like, Eastwood actually probably spent some effort into choosing what was good for him. Bronson seemed to take a lot of films. Some worked, some didn't. But he never had the sense he was getting too bothered. So if he liked a film, he would put more effort in, but he never seemed to care as much. So it's just that thing. He was just a working movie star, and he kept basically, if a script came in and it was within his schedule and he was paid enough, he'd probably do it. Eastwood would probably choose a bit better. I mean, Eastwood had bombs too, but not as many as Bronson, not as many as dull movies as Bronson did. But here you actually get him a good part, a part that really works for him. And it can do everything, showcase everything he's good at, which is a few lines that mean something and a presence that makes you watch and try to figure out what he's about. That's the presence that flows through this entire film, and it really works. And it's a shame the rest of the film doesn't quite live up to it. I mean, the production design's good, but compared to Dillinger, it feels over-designed. Dillinger feels a lot more like scrappy, and people were living hand to mouth. And it feels a lot more appropriate. In Hard Times, it feels a bit more production designed. I mean, it's not that bad. It's just like it feels production design compared to Dillinger. And Dillinger has the same composer, but the Dillinger score feels better because it's a bizarre thing. There's a repeating tune throughout the film that Milius wanted that the composer didn't want, and apparently Waterhill hated it. And it was like, and that was one of the best parts of that film, was this sense of sorrow for this one song continually repeating, the sense of doom coming. That was the only bit of doom that was coming in the film, but it gave you a sense of sadness that was below the surface. And it was really important, and they didn't get it. And that's the problem with this film, is it only goes so deep because Waterhill isn't comfortable, it seems, with working with actors and developing characters beyond a certain point. And these films have a certain code that can work, but also it means there is a distance. So if the writing and the direction isn't strong, his films can be very floaty. And as he get older, his films get longer and less cohesive, and some of the scripting wasn't as good, and they just get flabbier. But he wasn't a director who directed actors much, so his actors were kind of left alone. So if you hired a good actor, you get a good performance, but if you didn't, you wouldn't, really. And that kind of sort of limitation is here in the film, a sense of you get a few good supporting performances, but these are from actors who understand how to do the performances. In Dillinger, you get everybody's interested in some way. Everybody's being encouraged to do something interesting in the film, and it's much more freewheeling. You get a sense of enjoyment of people in front of the camera and behind the camera of what they're doing. Hard Times is more staged. Hard Times feels much more emotionally controlled, sort of like his protagonist, but it doesn't really it's less moving, partly because of the problem with the Coburn character, but also there is like an emotional distance that you don't get in like Once Upon a Time in the West, when Bronson was playing the same type of character. But in that, Leone filled in so much with the camera work and the scripting and the music. Here, you don't get as much. Here, it's more in genre, so there's a bit more distance. So it's flaw basically. But they're still both very good films. But they definitely signified the fact Milius was going to go on and do ambitious films that were a bit eccentric, but they were definitely worth spending time watching them. Where Walter Hill, his films were less generous with actors and to the audience in a sense that he was into genres, and sometimes the audience could be left behind because there was good films and bad films, but there was like an emotional distance, emotional limiting of the material to within certain boundaries that as this career went on, felt more and more manufactured boundaries of I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that, and the films became much more limited and hooked down into like smaller genre films. Even though there's some good films in there, it did feel like he had limited himself quite a bit. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll be back soon with another one. But that's me for now on Dillinger and Hard Times. See you later. Bye.